There is no one-size-fits-all best GPS watch for everyone on the market. The best watch for you might be different than the best watch for me. So how are we to go about figuring this out in 2024? Well, let's start with price. That's easy, right? Well, sort of. I would say that the value that each of us place upon these watches is very different from one to another. Maybe you're taking on your first marathon or an Ironman or even an ultra running event, and a good GPS watch is extremely valuable for you in 2024, and that's awesome. But I also totally think it's okay if you're not taking on some sort of big monumentous event this year, and you just need a good value option for your daily runs. A great GPS watch will range in price from something like the Coros Pace 3, which costs $230, all the way up to the Garmin Epix Pro, which can cost as much as $1,100. And yeah, I know that there are watches that cost much, much more than this, but that's just not the kind of stuff that I would typically recommend on this particular channel. Okay, in addition to price, I think we also should consider what activities you're going to be using this watch to accomplish. If your goal is something simple, some basic running, tracking your local 5K or 10K, or even actually a marathon, I actually think that you're in luck, because most of the modern watches in 2024 that I review on this channel can handle basic running functionality extremely well. And if you're hoping to use this GPS to track an ultra running event, so beyond marathon distance running, GPS battery life might be a huge factor for you, and there is a wide range of differences when it comes to battery life. You can go up to a month with something like the Garmin Enduro 2, or even 2 months with the Coros Vertex 2, or down to only a single day with something like the Apple Watch Series 9. And it's not to say that one is necessarily better than the other. According to Apple, they always say people don't mind routinely charging their watches every single day. And I actually think that that's a fairly common amount of time for battery life when it comes to these extremely smart smartwatches. But I do think that some activities, they just might require more battery life. For example, if an ultra marathon is on your list for 2024, I might avoid the Apple Watches in favor of something like a Coros watch or even a Garmin device. Now, in 2024, we are seeing more and more watches with those more battery intensive AMOLED screens, but I don't think that that means that you're stuck with a one-day battery life necessarily. Watches like the Garmin 265, the 965, Garmin Epix, they all can go about a week on a single charge with AMOLED screens with the always on display mode set to on. But back to activities, maybe you have high hopes of doing a triathlon in 2024, and I think that's awesome. It used to be that if you wanted triathlon functionality on a GPS watch, you did tend to have to pay extra for that. It tended to only come on the high-end watches. But the good news is that now in 2024, most of the decent watches, regardless of price, have that capability. They have the capability of properly handling multi-sport events. There are some subtleties. For example, Apple, Wahoo, now Garmin, now in beta at least, they can all auto detect when you switch from swimming to biking to running within a triathlon, which is pretty cool. So no need to press a lap button or a split button. I will say that mapping on these devices does tend to be reserved for higher end watches still. So if you are a hiker and you feel like you need maps, I would say that you can expect to pay a little bit more for that. You can expect to stay somewhere between like $500 and $1,000 to get a good watch with good GPS mapping on it. Garmin has their 955, which would be, right at the bottom of the budget there. They have the 965, the Phoenix, and the Epix series, all of which have mapping. Coros has their Apex series and their Vertex series, and Polar has the Vantage V3, which would be worth checking out. But in addition to activities, we still want to look at like watch body materials, GPS accuracy, heart rate tracking, battery life, sleep tracking, touchscreens, AMOLED versus MIP displays, recovery scores. Maybe most importantly, the ecosystem that surrounds these watches tracks this data and displays all of your activity data so that you can get the most from your purchase. There are so many features to consider when you're looking at these modern GPS watches. So I say we just kind of start from the top here. One clear distinction when choosing a watch in 2024, hasn't really changed all that much, is that we tend to see higher end models have nicer materials. So instead of plastic and Gorilla Glass, you might see things like titanium and sapphire crystal lens materials. You see this, for example, in the Phoenix series from Garmin as an option, but as well as like the Apple Watch Ultra is titanium and sapphire. And I found that these nicer materials, they really are more durable. They really are a little bit more resistant to scratches. So again, if you're out hiking and you like swipe your watch across a sheer rock face or something odd like that, these types of watches would be less likely to be damaged. Now, when it comes to GPS accuracy, and this is kind of interesting, or at least a bit of a trend in 2024, most of the GPS watches seem to be being made with this multi-band GPS chipset included, meaning that it can connect to multiple satellite systems at the same time to increase accuracy. Now, both Garmin and Apple can do something a little extra. They can automatically and intelligently switch between using this and not using it to save battery life. Speaking of battery life, the display technologies used on these watches is definitely going to drastically affect battery life. As of this recording, Coros doesn't have any watches with like AMOLED displays. They're all MIP displays or memory in pixel displays, whereas Garmin has a mix of MIP displays and AMOLED devices. And then companies like Apple only have AMOLED options, at least at the time of this recording. And AMOLED screens, they look brighter, they have higher pixel densities, they have these vibrant colors, and overall they just look sharper on screen. But I think it's easy for people to get swept up in that and not consider devices with MIP displays. MIP displays still use drastically less battery while still looking great when in direct sunlight, which is where we might really want them to perform well. Now, I've used AMOLED screens for a while now, and I don't hesitate to go back to MIP displays. When you're glancing at the time or you're just checking your last mile split, these displays just work. And each of these brands have their own way of tracking and displaying your data. Garmin has their app. It's called the Garmin Connect app. I think it's excellent, but in here you'll see like sleep tracking data. You'll see all of your activities that you can dive into and really bury yourself in the metrics. There's tons of recovery metrics like HRV, which stands for heart rate variability. You can see stress levels, you can see your steps, you can see your daily respiration rates, calories burned, and a ton more. But Garmin's not alone. The Coros app has been making a ton of upgrades lately with a lot of similar recovery metrics. And Polar's Flow app has always been kind of one of the gold standards when it comes to recording and displaying workout information and your recovery metrics. And then there's Apple. And Apple is kind of the odd duck here because it doesn't have just this central easy location, but it has the Apple Health app and it has the Fitness app. So some of the data is a bit divided into these two different areas, but it's still got a lot of massive data and details to dive into and review. So I will say that I do wish that Apple had a more robust recovery and kind of those overall training metrics like training readiness and stuff like that. But I will say that overall, all of these companies, I think, do a good job with their mobile applications and their general watch supporting ecosystems. And then lastly, and I put this in here because yes, it's important, but I will say maybe not quite as important as a lot of people think. GPS and heart rate accuracy, and to be blatantly clear here, personally, I think that Apple and Garmin do the best when it comes to GPS and heart rate accuracy. I do hope that some of the other companies will step it up when it comes to that. It's just that this stuff is extremely difficult. I said lastly before, but one other small trick that I hope we will see as a trend in 2024. I absolutely love having a built-in flashlight on these devices. I can't even describe. It's something I use every day, and I hope that it's a trend that catches on. Yes, I know that some companies use the display itself as a flashlight. That's okay, but the Garmin Epics and the Phoenix have this built-in flashlight. I just think it's amazing. And this video wasn't intended to name names specifically and tell you which specific watch I think that you should buy. More, it was supposed to be a guide for what I think you should consider when buying a GPS watch. But if you guys want me to, I'm happy to put together some sort of quick top 10 GPS watches for 2024, or at least top 10 lists on the current market. Nothing super scientific or anything like that, but just watches that I think are some of the best on the market currently. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what else people should consider when they're buying a GPS watch in 2024. Let me know what I missed. And as always, be sure that you're getting out there, swimming, biking, running, rinsing, and repeating it all over again. And we will see you on the next one.